What's up, guys? So I've seen this asked elsewhere. And I thought it'd be something I addressed because it's really kind of simple. Who would have thought me with a simple answer? And a little bit of a sore throat, excuse me there. Uh, it's, how do you know if you have good genetics? So in terms of like athleticism, you'll know. I mean, there's no guesswork to it. You either have it or you don't. You can certainly hone it. You can certainly make yourself more athletic than you currently are, but athleticism you're going to know right away if you have it or you're not. It's not like something where, you can add over the course of your lifetime 3, 4, 500 pounds to your initial deadlift. You're not going to start by running, a 6,540 and get that down to a 4,3. That's just not going to happen. So, as far as athleticism, you'll know. In terms of like bodybuilding and powerlifting, they're pretty similar. Powerlifting more on the strength, and bodybuilding definitely more on your muscle inserts and how they grow and things like that. First is going to be just your overall build. If you're a tall, lanky guy, if you got a short torso and long limbs and stuff like that, you're probably not going to be good at either one of them. That's just not ideal for both strength as it's expressed in powerlifting, or building muscle and filling out a frame. If you look, the modern bodybuilding, most of those guys are very short. It's easier to pack a lot of muscle on, and a 5'8" guy who gets to 300 pounds in the off season and cuts down to 250 is more impressive by today's bodybuilding standards than a 6'6" guy who gets to 300 pounds and cuts down to 250 for the show. So you're gonna there's certain builds that are indicative to these. So that would be the first thing to look for, is the build. So if you do have a build, a frame that is indicative to either one of those sports, the next thing I'm going to tell you is put in 10 years, a decade of consistent, hard, smart training, proper nutrition, and proper recovery protocols. A decade. After those 10 years, you will know if you have good genetics or not. And maybe you figure it out sooner, maybe not, but you're not gonna really know, and that's gonna lead me to kind of, I guess this is gonna be a little bit of a rant, is today's times, today's generation is such a, what have you done for me lately, instant gratification generation, that you'll see. What I see happening is a couple things. It's either somebody does it for a year or two, and then they either quit because they're not as far as along as Johnny YouTuber is, or whoever their idol is, they're nowhere close after a year or two, so they quit. Or after a year or two, they just hop on gear, and then that leads to you've got all these people on gear now that started gear very early in their training, and didn't give themselves a chance to really put in the work and see how far they could go. So you've got a bunch of people who assume that that's what everybody does. Everybody just jumps on gear after a couple of years, and that leads to the whole if you lift X, or what the internet says, if somebody is bigger, stronger, faster, and or better looking than myself, then they must be on steroids. And that leads to that mentality, because you have so many people now who just in little time at all, they want results, and they don't want to put in 10 years of work to get the results. They're not patient enough for that. And that's what you see happening. You see, like I said, people either quit or hop on gear very, very early in their training. I'm not the gear police. It's a felony to buy and sell steroids in the United States right now, but none of my business. I think it should be recreational legally. However, I would encourage people to not do that. You're free to do as you please, of course. But man, like really put in the work. Yeah, I mean, see what you can do. And from what I've heard from others, you build up that natty base, and it's only going to make the transition to gear that much better when and if you decide to go that route. But it is a felony in the United States to buy and sell that stuff. So I am not encouraging anybody to do that. And yeah, so really, if you want to know if you have good genetics, you have to put in the time and work. You're not going to know overnight, unless you just, you bench 500 pounds your first time benching, then yeah, you've got good genetics, but I've yet to see somebody do that. So put in the work. You know, you don't know. You don't know. Some people are late bloomers. Some people, it takes a couple years and then it just clicks and then the gains start coming. There's so many variables out there, honing in your diet, what food you respond to as an individual. Obviously, there's macronutritional balances that are pretty unanimous or, ubiquitous as to what works for building muscle and strength. However, individual foods, we react as individuals, and some of us digest some foods better than others and all that good jazz. So it takes time, some self-experimentation. But the main thing is, the consistent hard work, sleeping well, and, eating well for your body. And you put in the time, the effort, and blah, 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 and the work and focus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then you'll know if you have good genetics. It's extremely hard to tell. Some people, they might pull 405 the very first time they deadlift, and they might struggle to ever get beyond 600. It happens just because your initial starting point is not your ending point, and your starting point is not always indicative of where you're going to end up either. So you really have to put in the time and effort, with few exceptions, and obviously outside of athleticism, to know genetically where you may or may not lie.